when you said about defining aims, like 80% of young people involved in the process should feel that they are involved, and you said that the setting the aims should be done together with the target groups. I'm wondering how did it happen that in Swedish youth centers this aim is so high that 80% of young people they wanted that young people also felt that this is realistic for them to be in so vast majority truly meaningfully involved in the process of preparation and running activities.
First of all, you read me a little bit wrong, because I don't think that setting aims is basically a political issue.
All right.
Yeah. And of course, young people should have influence over politics, but basically, setting aims for local youth work is basically a task for local politicians, making them also grounded with youth work grounded in the political context, so to speak. This 80% was just an example. This has nothing to do with reality. It was just showing you, just setting a figure randomly, so to speak. My examples of figures when I said aims they are not actual figures. They were just examples.
Because I remember from the publication, I think that this is 80%
What is 80%?
participation.
No, 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 no. If you look at KEX aims,
Yes.
we have an index on participation that is sums up quite a lot of different indicators and makes an average of them, and that is 75%.
Right. Okay. Yeah, but I took from your speech like on the every level of setting the journey of the quality development, quality indicators development, young people should be present, no? So when you said setting aims is a job for the policymakers, like at least young people being part of the process and setting those aims are realistic, no? Because for Poland, 80% is not achievable. I have a sense, no?
I have a total sense that if you look at Poland, I don't know shit about Poland, but I've been in quite many different European countries looking at youth work provision, and the challenges and the sort of resources are in a basic level when meeting young people. There are no differences. If I look at Slovenia, we have 4 or 5 member municipalities in Slovenia, and they have exactly the same kind of challenges and so on as Swedish youth workers. And I would say, and this is to be very clear, if we have an aim, let's take an example, then young people's participation, 75%, an index which combines, questions on evaluation, on preparations, and all these kind of different things, and we take an average and we end up in 75%. This is a long-term aim. This is really a long-term aim. It's not that young people would participate 75% tomorrow or even next year or the year after, perhaps. But all my experience tells you that if you don't have the right level of ambition, you won't succeed. So the process that we are using, that we are having 75% as a long-term aim, and then we support organizations, municipalities, NGOs in how to reach this. And some are on 50%, but we also have those that are on 80. It's not a question of competition. It's not a setting aims that are reachable today. It's a setting a long-term aim of an ideal youth work. KEX aims is the ideal youth work. There is not one single youth center or one single organization within KEX that had reached all our aims at the same time, the same year. It has never happened. We have 9 overarching aims related to participation, safety, learning, how they spend their money, young people producing activities. And the best ever result that has been achieved twice over, and now I'm talking over 10 years, 15 years I'm talking, has been 7 out of 9. That's the best overall results. Most youth centers reach perhaps half of the ideal. But they set aims. Okay, this year we reached 50%. Next year, we want to reach 55.
Mm.
The year after, 60.
Yes. So it doesn't mean they fail, no? They improve.
I mean, it's not a question of fail, it's not a question of competition, it's a question of setting the right ambition and supporting each other to get there.
I was wondering if the quality indicators set for each center, youth center across the country, because KEX is gathering youth centers in the network, are they exactly the same or they differ?
They are exactly the same.
Mhm.
I mean, the long-term vision is exactly the same. The long-term overarching aims are the same, but obviously locally they set different part aims or step-by-step aims depending on where they are. We have youth centers that are extremely successful in participation, but perhaps not so good in learning. And then they focus on learning and the learning how young people learn in youth work. And then they say, they perhaps there the aim is 80% for learning, that young people should perceive that they're learning, but they perhaps reach 60. Okay, next year 65. And then the idea behind KEX is that we say, okay, we could put you in contact with another municipality or another youth center that is successful in this, and you could listen to them and learn from them, and then they will help you improve. I mean, we're a network for mutual help. So we have to take away this sort of competition feeling of measuring and having figures and make it very, very, very clear that you have different resources, you work in different areas, and so on and so on. And it's a question of helping each other, but at the same time, we need to have a vision. And we know that youth work needs young people's participation to be of high quality.
Mhm.
And can I add in on that, because I'm part of the Swedish municipalities and also of the youth workers. As you were mentioning that if we don't reach that aim, that we like failing, I wouldn't say that we would look at it that way. We would ask ourselves curious questions.
Yeah.
Why did we get a lesser result this year than last year? What have happened? Have we had another form of finances? Have we reached another group? Have we had a lot of people, youth workers, quitting? There are a lot of questions that could explain why we get the results that we get. And then we will also try to fix that in a way. How should we work towards next year? And then we can also, as Yuna says, learn from each other, take help from other youth centers, and just asking ourselves those curious questions and try to find the answers. And sometimes, because we do those evaluations annually via KEX, I actually think the result is about to come in a month or so for this year. But during the year, we also can we have surveys for groups, for example, that we can get results during the year. But then we can also ask questions, or we can gather young people to ask them questions, to sit with us and think about, what do you think? Why do you think we have this result? How do you think we should work, and involve them in the process? So that is also really important. So that is why we don't see it as a failure. Of course, if the numbers would drop of participation with 30%, I would see that as a failure. But it is like a little bit, and you can see that we are going in the wrong direction. We have to do something. And even though we have a good result, we also have to ask ourselves, why is this? What are we doing? What are we doing right? And ask the young people to be a part of the process also. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I took also from it that those basic preconditions of actually even being able to measure anything are competencies of youth workers, the equipment and basic needs covered, no? And we actually struggle with that. So, yeah.
The question is always where to start, when developing things. But I mean, as I try to say, I mean, you don't really know what you need, what kind of tools you need before you know what you want to achieve. I mean, if you're a carpenter, sometimes you need a saw, sometimes you need a hammer. And you don't go to work and say, "Oh, I think today I will need a hammer," and then you could come to work and you realize that you would need a saw and you would need some other kind of a machine. So still, even if this might sound, I mean, we don't have the capacity, this and this, and we don't have you have brains. And that's basically, you have brains and you have people and you have young people, and you have to focus on this kind of a discussion, because otherwise you will take steps that you will have to remake in a second step, if you see what I mean, because you used a hammer, but the hammer was not the appropriate things to use in this context. You needed some kind of you needed a screwdriver. So finding out what you want to achieve, and if you want to develop the preconditions, you have to be able to argue for the right preconditions. I mean, this is of course a matter of finances. And if you should be able to argue for the right kind of preconditions, you will say that if we get these preconditions, we will be able to achieve this, because this is what we want to achieve. Not first saying we want these preconditions, and then people, I mean, if I was a politician, I would ask, why do you need that? What is going to happen if I invest in this kind of a youth center? What will I get out of it? What we got young people get out of it? What are you supposed to achieve through running this youth center? And this is a question you need to be able to answer. I mean, I will give you another example just from my own background, so to speak. And this was when I was just about to be leaving as head of department, and I was having 7 youth centers. 6 of them were functioning very, very well. The 7th was a disaster. I went to the political board and showing these results, the overall results, and then I said, okay, this is the average in my municipality. If I look at only 6 youth centers, this is the average, and it was much higher, because this youth center has these figures. And they say, oh my God, what is this? Why is it so bad? And I said, that's because this youth center is situated in the wrong kind of facilities, in an apartment building, in the cellar of an apartment building. It's flooding the floor every day. They couldn't play music. The distribution of facilities and localities is totally bizarre. And this is the public space that you're offering to young people. I couldn't make any better youth work in this kind of facilities. It ended up that I got 70,000 euros to build a new youth center. No, 700,000 euros to build a new youth center. Because I say, I mean, you're politically responsible for the kind of resources we have. We have today 6 good youth centers and one that is a catastrophe, and I couldn't good youth work in this kind of facilities. And we got a lot of money to build a new one. So a bad result, if you see what I mean, because this was a bad result, obviously. It was a good result because it provoked change.
Yes, your question. Actually connected to this point, considering your 20, 40 years experience in youth working, what do you notice that young people needs in a youth center in terms of space? What they are looking, what they need in general, like they need like a big space, or there are like different activities, or they want to be by themselves. Like, if you can suggest us, because we are starting a new youth center, so we are thinking what actually we should put inside to make it to make a good quality place for them where they can feel comfortable. So what are your suggestions for us?
Oh, I mean, this is always hard because it depends, of course, so much on what kind of resources you have. But I would say, at least if I look at youth centers in Sweden, Slovenia, Lithuania, and so on, I mean, having a cafe is one important part. A social area where young people could meet and discuss. So having a cafe is one of the things that I would definitely put in a youth center. I don't know about the rules about alcohol and so on, but I mean, where you could serve coffee, tea, different kind of things, preferably run by young people. And then I would have some kind of variety of spaces. That is to say, so that people could, for example, have a training or have a group activity without sitting together with all the other young people. So it's not just one big room, if you see what I mean, that there are different rooms available. I've been seeing very small youth centers. I mean, in terms of square meters, where they have maybe just a cafe. That's all that there is. Then you should also start thinking about how to cooperate with others, because for example, they have been cooperating with schools to be able to provide sports activities. They've been cooperating with theaters to have theater groups and so on. So it's not only a question what you have in the facilities, but it's also a question of what kind of links you have to other kind of institutions or activities that you could cooperate with in order to support. I mean, there are sports organizations perhaps that you could cooperate with, cultural organizations you could cooperate with that have facilities. So what you put in there, besides, of course, that you should discuss this with young people, but I mean, to me, youth work is basic, as was said in this recommendation, it's basically a social activity. And to me, the space is not only a space where you should sort of hang out. I mean, it's a starting point for a journey, might it be mental or physical. That is to say, you have to, ask what young people want to, not necessarily what they want to do, but what they want to achieve, what they want to change, what are their dreams. And this will also take you sort of, if you see what I mean, outside of the facilities, through youth exchanges, through other kinds of activities, through cooperation with other institutions and so on. So this kind of a social space where you could have a coffee is, to me, extremely important in creating a good youth work atmosphere. And if you could have young people running it, getting the money and the profit from the cafe, it might also help them to finance activities of their own choice. I don't know if this answers your question.
That's a really great answer. Thank you.
This actually gives us a lot of arguments, because plenty of youth centers in Krakow are just one room, and it's a relatively small room. And in the political framework, it is expected from the operators of those spaces to have both social spaces and activity spaces in this one room. So we have to either maneuver with time or focus on one of it, either activities or running space, social space.
Yeah, and I would say there's a tendency in Sweden, if you look at the tendencies is in youth work, that these extremely small youth centers are actually vanishing, that municipalities are focusing on fewer but bigger youth centers. That's a sort of general tendency, because it's hard to run a youth center in a very small room. There you have to choose between running activities and being a social space. But I would still, if needed, focus on a social space and creating links to other organizations and making it possible for you to use other facilities, because having only activities is, I would say, never a good choice.
Yes.
Yeah, and one thing that we also have found out is that if the young people for themselves are running their own activities, then young people are also willing to travel to that youth center. So there is no need to have a youth center next door of where they are living, because if they are doing the activities and are running the activities and suggesting what they are to do, then they are also willing to travel to that youth center. So we actually try now in the area where I work in Gothenburg to have different groups of activities in different youth centers. So they can cooperate with different young people. Then they can have more opportunities to different activities run by the young ones, and they travel between.
Because right now we are in the discussion phase of a network of Krakow youth centers, which are run by different NGOs, and municipality is outsourcing this to different NGOs. And we had, for the first time, I think it's after 3 years only, when we have a space to meet and exchange practices. And there's a lot of tensions between them, as in competitions and so on. So this was not mitigated before. This was not prevented even though it's obvious that we should collaborate. And right now the emphasis is on those youth centers to serve different purposes even. so that they are very diverse from the fact that we are different organizations coming from different sectors. Because youth sector is not existent, no? But yeah, like Europe for Youth, we try to follow the strictly youth work principles. And the other organizations, they come from either culture or social aid. And they have this image that we don't have to work towards the same things, that they have different target groups, they attract different people and so on. So this is fine that we are doing completely different things. And that's something that yeah, it kind of goes against the political framework for which youth centers have been created, because they were created in the sector of public participation. So as a political goal, they want to activate young people to be active citizens. And yeah, right now we are in there, and the basic question is like, yeah, but why do we have to do that? If just from the political background, even it can be a dead, let's say, sentence, no, that it is based on somewhere, but we are actually doing something completely or something slightly different, and we should be diverse. What do you think about that?
If you look at the core principles of youth work within the charter, and you look at what I quoted from the Council of Europe recommendations, if they fit into that, they are doing youth work. If they don't fit into that, they're not doing youth work. I'm not saying that everything done by young people that is not youth work is not good. I mean, obviously, we have schools that do things that are important for young people. But if they are financed by the municipality for doing youth work, they should exist within the framework of the Council of Europe, which Poland has signed, obviously. And to me, they should sort of try to follow and develop their youth work in accordance with the charter. And there is, in some municipalities in Sweden, we could see this as well, that they said, oh, this youth center is for culture, this youth center is for sports, this youth center is for boys, more or less, troublesome boys. And to me, this is not a good idea. Because, of course, it's all of these youth centers are easily reachable for all young people in the municipality, then it would be okay, but that is rarely the case. And young people need, it says in the preface of the charter that young people need a space where they can set their own agenda. And to me, this is a crucial part of youth work. And if youth workers have a too clear idea on we work with culture, then young people are not setting the agenda, because then youth workers are setting the agenda for young people. And that is why this social space and this starting point of an open discussion on what are your dreams, what do you want to achieve, is crucial to youth work. And if youth workers say that, oh, but we are focused on sport, we only fix sport activities, and they are situated in an area where it's sort of a natural gathering point for young people, then they're missing out on the core of youth work, that is to see what are the needs of young people. And of course, some of them will need or are interested in sports, but others are definitely interested in other things, including politics, social engagement, climate crisis, racism, you name it. And youth work needs to be open to all these different kinds of activity. It's not just leisure time activities, sports, and cultural expressions. It's the whole living situation of young people. When I talk to youth workers in Sweden, I used to ask them, if young people come, if there comes a group of young people to you and saying we are sexually harassed in school, which actually is the case quite often, would this be an issue for youth work? And I would say it is. Definitely so. Because if this is a concern and a need of young women in a certain age living in the area, that they don't feel that school responds to this, they want to start a group combating sexual harassment in school, then youth work should do so. Because that is their needs. If we're talking about that youth work should meet the needs and interests of young people, this is might be their main need.
We have faced this expectation of young people that they are not responding well to the open agenda. So that this is your space, you come to do whatever you'd like to. You can talk to us afternoons or this open thing that are vague and blurry for them. They expect to have a program. So what do you offer here? No, what kind of activities can we do here? And they expect provided activities.
That I definitely recognize, and that has been sort of a shift in Swedish youth work, I would say, because if you go back 15 years in Sweden, that was exactly the situation also here. My big brother went here and you provided a ping pong tournament, or you provided a sports activity, or you provided this, and now you're asking me to contribute. Now you're asking me, what the hell, why don't I get the same thing as my big brother got? And that's a question of attitude from youth workers, making also challenging young people, showing them possibilities that they weren't aware of. I mean, it's a question of dialogue, but also saying that my role is the following. My role is not to fix activities. I mean, I started as a youth worker many, many years ago, and I was expected to provide, table tennis tournaments, billiard tournaments, provide camps that young people could buy into. And I just stopped doing that and started to create things together with them. And that's handicraft. That's the handicraft of youth workers, awakening the engagement of young people, being in dialogue, saying that if you want this activity, I mean, we're happy to provide this activity together with you. And this takes time, yes. And it breaks the preconception of youth work among some young people, but it's a necessary break.
So we should not, because I hear this. If they don't respond well to this, you simply shouldn't do it. No, you should do something else. Let's do a cultural house instead. Why is it bad? No.
I mean, you should. I mean, sooner or later, hopefully sooner, they will realize that. I mean, they are used to see themselves as customers of youth work. The change is making them feel that they are co-creators of youth work. And this often starts with, showing them that this kind of an activity, you have to help us to create, because if you want to do this, but then it has to be, out of their comfort zone, perhaps, or out of the box of their expectations. When I started many years ago, and this perhaps not is a relevant example any longer, I don't know, but they wanted to do on camps, and I said, okay, then we go to the north of Sweden. Oh, but we couldn't go to the north of Sweden. We don't have finances. Okay, so now how do we get finances? How do we do this? And they started to run the cafe, for example, to gather money. I mean, make them part of the set aims that they couldn't reach by themselves or aren't. Then you could run everyday activities also. But running everyday activity is, also a question of how to handle them and making young people part of creating these everyday activities. But I mean, all these things go together. I don't want to boast it too much, but we just created two documents. One is the youth worker competencies document, and the other one is a youth work curriculum. And I think these explains, to taken together, the process and approach you need to have to take the step from providing activities to actually running youth work.
Thank you so much, Jonas, for joining us this Sunday morning.